My name is Emma Collins. I'm 29 years old, and last month I faced something I never imagined I would, a moment that shattered my world and tested everything I thought I knew about family and trust. It all began when I was barred from attending my father's funeral. Not by strangers or distant relatives, but by my own stepmother, Olivia. The woman who was supposed to care for my father in his final days made sure I couldn't say goodbye. She told me coldly, "This gathering is only for heirs named in the will." At that moment, my heart broke in a way I couldn't put into words. But Olivia had no idea what I was carrying in my bag, the truth hidden carefully for months. As the lawyer opened my file during the will reading, Olivia's face turned ashen. What happened next changed everything. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, especially in your own family, then you'll understand why I'm sharing my story. It's a journey of heartbreak, deception, and ultimately justice. Growing up in Seattle, my dad, James Collins, was my rock. After my mom passed away from cancer when I was just 13, it was always the two of us against the world. Dad was a self-made man, a successful software entrepreneur who built his company from scratch. But no matter how busy he was, every Sunday morning, we had a ritual. He would take me out on his sailboat in Puget Sound when the weather allowed, followed by brunch at our favorite cafe. Those moments were sacred. He listened patiently to all my teenage worries and always reminded me to trust my instincts. "Your mother was the wisest person I ever knew," he'd say, "and you carry that wisdom too." When I was 20 and in college, Dad met Olivia at a charity gala. She was charming and seemed genuinely interested in him. I wanted to believe she was the happiness he deserved after years of grief. But soon, cracks appeared. Olivia came with 2 kids, Ethan and Grace, who seemed more interested in our home and wealth than in building a real family. Their smiles were too wide, their laughter too loud, and their eyes lingered on Dad's assets a little too long. Still, I tried. I invited Grace for coffee and tried to connect with Ethan about college plans. Dad told me they just needed time. 6 months after they met, Dad and Olivia were married. From that day, everything changed. Pictures of Mom disappeared. Family heirlooms were shoved into boxes to make way for Olivia's modern tastes. Our Sunday brunches vanished, replaced by Olivia's endless excuses and family commitments with her side of the family. Calls interrupted our rare moments together, often frantic or suspicious. Meanwhile, Ethan wrecked 2 cars and Dad replaced them without complaint. Grace racked up credit card bills he quietly paid off. I chose a different path, working through college and earning my independence even though Dad offered to pay. Over the past year, Dad's health took a sharp decline. He became thinner, more fragile, and confused. Medications changed constantly. Olivia controlled every aspect of his care. When I expressed concern, she dismissed me coldly. "He's just getting older," she'd say. But I knew something was wrong. On my last visit, Dad whispered to me before Olivia returned, "If anything happens, talk to Claire at the office. She has something for you." That was the last time we spoke privately. Then came the hospital call. Dad was admitted to Seattle General with heart complications. When I rushed there, Olivia blocked me at every turn, claiming only immediate family could visit. I was his daughter, but she treated me like a stranger. After hours of pleading, a nurse named Rachel quietly told me Dad was asking for me awake at times, despite what Olivia said. But before I could see him, Dad passed away quietly in the night. The funeral was a nightmare. Olivia controlled everything, where, when, and who sat where. I was shoved to the back watching as she played the grieving wife, ignoring me completely. But Dad had planned for this. A week later, his assistant Claire delivered a sealed envelope with his personal seal, an updated will, and a key to a safety deposit box. My father's last gift was the truth hidden from Olivia, waiting to be revealed. That first part of my story is only the beginning, a story of loss, betrayal, and the fight to honor my father's true wishes. Stay with me as I share how I uncovered secrets that almost destroyed my family, and how I found the strength to reclaim my father's legacy. Growing up in Seattle, my relationship with Dad was everything to me. After Mom passed away from breast cancer when I was just 13, Dad became my entire world. He was this strong, gentle presence who worked tirelessly to build a successful software company from the ground up. But what I cherished most wasn't the wealth or the status he achieved, it was the quiet moments we shared. Every Sunday morning, weather permitting, Dad would take me out on his sailboat in Puget Sound. The crisp sea air, the gentle sway of the boat, and the soothing sound of the waves became our sanctuary away from the chaos of life. After sailing, we'd head to our favorite spot, the Lighthouse Cafe, for brunch. It wasn't just about the food, it was about the connection. Over steaming cups of coffee and buttery croissants, Dad would listen to my teenage worries with the patience of a saint. "Emma," he'd say, "you have your mother's instincts. Trust them always." Those words stuck with me through every challenge, every heartbreak, and every victory. When I was a sophomore in college, Dad introduced me to Olivia Winters at a charity event. She was radiant, charming, poised, and seemingly sincere. At first, I was happy for him. After losing Mom, he deserved some happiness. Olivia had 2 kids, Ethan 18 and Grace 16. I tried to welcome them, inviting Grace out for coffee, chatting with Ethan about college plans. But something felt off. Their smiles seemed forced. Their eyes lingered too long on Dad's possessions, and they laughed at his jokes a little too loudly. Despite my reservations, Dad assured me, "Give them time, Emma. They've been through their own pain." He told me their father had abandoned them years ago, and maybe they were just trying to find a new family. 6 months after meeting, Dad and Olivia married. The day was bittersweet. I stood beside Dad as his best woman, forcing a smile as Olivia recited vows about love and honesty, words that sounded hollow to me. After the wedding, our home began to change. Photos of Mom vanished, replaced by portraits of Olivia and her children. Family heirlooms were shoved away. Our Sunday rituals disappeared, replaced by Olivia's endless excuses. "The Hendersons are visiting," or "Ethan has a game." When Dad and I did manage to spend time together, Olivia would call repeatedly with fabricated emergencies. Ethan and Grace acted entitled, treating Dad's home and money as their birthright. Ethan crashed 2 cars his first year driving, and Dad replaced them without complaint. Grace maxed out credit cards, and Dad quietly covered the bills. I took a different route. I worked through college, taking modest loans and part-time jobs because I valued my independence. Dad called me stubborn, just like Mom. But I wanted to make him proud on my own terms. Over the last year, Dad's health deteriorated rapidly. His robust frame thinned, he developed heart problems, and his medication changed constantly. When I voiced my concerns, Olivia dismissed me coldly, saying Dad was just aging. But I saw the confusion in Dad's eyes, the fog that clouded his mind. On my last visit, he whispered urgently, "If anything happens, talk to Claire. She has something for you." But before he could say more, Olivia returned, her eyes cold. That was the last real conversation I had with Dad. The day after that last visit, everything spiraled out of control. I was working late in my apartment in downtown Seattle when I got an unexpected call from Ethan, my stepbrother. His voice was shaky, almost unrecognizable. "Emma, Dad's in the hospital. Mom told me to call you." My heart dropped. The pain that followed was like a tidal wave crashing over me. I booked the earliest flight to Seattle, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Arriving at Seattle General Hospital, I was filled with hope and anxiety. But that hope was quickly crushed. Olivia stood in the waiting room, perfectly put together, calm and cold. When I approached her, she stood between me and the ICU entrance, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "This is only for immediate family," she said, ignoring the fact that I was Dad's daughter. The hospital staff were caught in the middle of this bitter family feud. Nurses looked uncomfortable, torn between hospital rules and the truth of my relationship to Dad. I begged to see him, but Olivia's grip on the situation was tight. Your father explicitly requested no visitors outside his household, the doctor finally told me, parroting Olivia's claims. I was devastated, refused to leave, and was escorted out by hospital security. For days I tried everything, different shifts, talking to administration, waiting in parking lots, hoping to catch a sympathetic staff member. Then, one nurse, Claire, slipped me a secret. Dad was awake sometimes and had been asking for me. She offered to help me sneak in during late hours. That night, I barely slept, clinging to the hope of seeing Dad one last time. But fate was cruel. At 6 a.m. I received the call, no daughter wants. Dad had suffered a massive cardiac arrest and passed away despite resuscitation attempts. I had missed my chance to say goodbye. Olivia had won. She had stolen those final moments from me. The funeral was just as cold. Olivia controlled every detail, pushing me to the back while she sat front and center with her children. The service was held in an upscale chapel far from the small, cozy place Dad had always wanted, the very one where Mom's funeral had been. Olivia portrayed herself as the devoted wife, never once mentioning me. When it was time to view Dad's body, her brother physically blocked my path. Family first, he snarled. My last look at Dad was rushed and incomplete. At the reception, I overheard Olivia speaking with her lawyer, Gregory. Everything is settled as it should be, she said smugly. I left early, tears streaming down my face. I felt alone, defeated. But Dad had planned for this. A few days later, his longtime executive assistant, Claire, showed up at my hotel with a sealed envelope. Inside were a handwritten letter, a new will, and a key to a safety deposit box, all hidden from Olivia. Dad had anticipated her betrayal. He had fought for me from beyond the grave. The letter from my father was a lifeline, a piece of his heart left for me to find amid the chaos Olivia had created. It began with an apology, an expression of regret for trusting Olivia despite the warning signs he had seen. Dad wrote about the subtle changes he'd noticed over the past year, missing items, altered documents, and the unsettling feeling that his health was worsening under suspicious circumstances. He confessed to paranoia at first, but then uncovered a disturbing truth. Olivia had been in contact with her ex-husband, a man she claimed had abandoned her, but who in reality was still entangled in her life. My father had quietly rewritten his will 6 months before his death, entrusting a new law firm with the documents. Olivia had no knowledge of this update. The enclosed legal document detailed a dramatically different distribution of assets, modest trusts for Olivia and her children. But the bulk of his estate, including the family home and his company shares, was left to me. Most poignantly, he had included a clause demanding a full investigation if his death was suspicious, specifically mentioning toxicology and medical reviews. Tears streamed down my face as I read his words. He believed in me, trusted my instincts, and had done everything he could to protect me. The weight of his love and foresight filled me with both grief and renewed determination. I hadn't just inherited money, I had inherited a mission. The next morning, I went to the bank with the key Dad had given me. Inside the safety deposit box were more revelations: photos of Olivia meeting secretly with her ex-husband, financial records showing suspicious transfers to offshore accounts linked to her family, and medical notes. Dad had made questioning changes to his prescriptions. A thumb drive contained audio recordings of Olivia and her children discussing their plans to control Dad's wealth once he was gone. The evidence painted a chilling picture. My father wasn't just being manipulated financially. He was isolated, controlled, possibly even harmed. The question haunted me: had Olivia accelerated his decline, or worse? I packed the evidence carefully. Dad had given me everything I needed to fight back. Now I had to find the right moment to expose the truth. The day of the will reading arrived, and with it a mix of anxiety and fierce determination. I hadn't been officially notified, but an old family friend and my father's former attorney, Michael Reynolds, tipped me off about the time and place. "Something doesn't sit right with this whole situation, Emma," he warned over coffee the day before. "Your dad loved you deeply. He wouldn't have cut you out like this. And switching attorneys after decades. It's suspicious. I arrived at the law offices of Harrison and Powell promptly at 2 p.m. The receptionist glanced at her screen, her face betraying surprise. "Miss Collins, you're not on the list for this meeting," she said flatly. I kept my voice calm but firm. "I'm James Collins's daughter. I have a right to be present for the reading of his will." After a brief phone call, she directed me to wait. Minutes later, Gregory Harrison himself appeared, looking uncomfortable. "Miss Collins, this is awkward, but the reading has already begun. Mrs. Collins has indicated you're aware you're not included." Patricia's tone was cold as she said, "This meeting is only for heirs named in the will." I met her gaze, voice steady. "I'm here because I have a right to hear my father's wishes directly, even if I'm disinherited." Harrison sighed but nodded. "Very well, please follow me." Inside the conference room, Patricia's expression shifted from shock to anger to a smug composure. Her children sat on either side, and her brother was present too. "What is she doing here?" Patricia demanded without looking at me. Harrison explained Miss Collins requested to be present. "As Mr. Collins's daughter, she has that right regardless of the will's contents." Olivia scoffed. Robert was clear about his wishes. But I wasn't about to back down. Harrison continued reading the will dated January of that year, which left almost everything to Olivia and her children. The family home valued at $3 million, shares in the company worth over $15 million, vacation properties, and art collections were all bequeathed to Patricia and her kids. Patricia placed a hand on her chest, feigning emotion. "Robert always took care of us. He knew what was best for the family." Her triumphant smile made my blood boil, but I maintained my composure. Then came my moment. I reached into my bag and pulled out the sealed document from the new law firm. "I believe there's been a mistake," I said quietly, placing it before Harrison. His eyes narrowed at the unfamiliar seal. "This is my father's most recent will, executed and filed 6 months ago," I explained. Patricia shot to her feet, outraged. "That's ridiculous. Robert would have told me if he updated his will." Harrison carefully broke the seal and scanned the document. His skepticism shifted to concern. The will was properly notarized and bore my father's unmistakable signature. He looked up. "Mrs. Collins, were you aware of this document?" Her face drained of color. "This is a forgery." "Preposterous," she hissed, but the evidence was undeniable. The new will changed everything. Olivia and her children were provided modest trusts, but were barred from controlling the principal. The family home was to be sold, proceeds directed to a charitable foundation in my mother's name. The bulk of the estate, including controlling shares in the company, was left to me with explicit instructions to continue my father's legacy. Most damning was a clause about suspicious circumstances surrounding my father's death, mandating a full investigation. Olivia's rage was palpable. She tried to dismiss it all as fabrication, but Harrison warned her that such outbursts would only harm her case. Patricia's carefully crafted facade cracked. She accused me of manipulating my father, calling him confused. I calmly responded, "My father was of sound mind. This document is his final word." Harrison suggested adjourning to verify the will's authenticity, but Patricia abruptly left, vowing the fight wasn't over. As I gathered my things, a strange calm washed over me. Dad had anticipated this moment. He had protected me even after he was gone. The battle ahead would be long, but this first victory was mine. The days following the will reading were chaotic and fraught with tension. Patricia refused to accept the court's decision and refused to vacate the family home as mandated by the updated will. She changed the security codes, barred staff from letting me in, and flooded my phone with hateful texts. Each message alternated between threats and twisted attempts to gaslight me, painting me as the greedy daughter trying to steal what wasn't mine. Her brother's voicemails added another layer of menace, warning me to back off or face consequences. The fear was real, but my resolve was stronger. Feeling unsafe, I checked out of my hotel and moved to a different one under an assumed name. The weight of Patricia's reaction unnerved me. I knew she was desperate and dangerous. The next day, I met with Caroline Thompson, an attorney specializing in contested wills and estate fraud. After reviewing the documents, Caroline said plainly, "Your father was smart. He knew Olivia would try to contest this. By using an independent firm and filing with the state, he created a strong legal position." Caroline explained that while Patricia could try to challenge the will, she'd have to prove Dad was not of sound mind when he signed it. But Caroline added seriously, the medical records suggest something darker. There's evidence Olivia tampered with his medications. If that's true, we're talking about criminal charges beyond just a civil dispute. Together, we crafted a strategy. Emergency motions were filed to freeze all estate assets and remove Patricia as executor, citing the will's clear instructions and the damning evidence from the safety deposit box. But Olivia didn't back down quietly. She launched a smear campaign among Dad's social circle, spreading lies that I had manipulated a grieving, confused father to rewrite his will. She claimed jealousy and greed motivated me, accusations that cut deep, but only fueled my determination. One morning, I returned to my hotel to find my door slightly ajar. Heart pounding, I called security before entering. My room had been searched, belongings disturbed, and the copies of Dad's medical records, vital evidence, were missing. Fortunately, I had kept the originals safe elsewhere. Security footage showed a maintenance man entering, but the camera never captured his face clearly. The hotel manager was apologetic, but helpless beyond changing my room and increasing security. Days later, Mason, my stepbrother, texted me unexpectedly, "Need to talk." "Not with Mom." "Plaza Cafe tomorrow at 10 a.m. Skeptical but curious, I agreed. Meeting in a public place was wise, ensuring safety. Mason arrived looking tired and conflicted. "I don't know what to believe anymore," he confessed. "Mom's falling apart. She's been drinking all day, burning documents in the backyard." Burning documents. My blood ran cold. Mason explained that Olivia had sent him and Grace away after realizing they were watching her. "I found prescription bottles with Dad's name on them, but the labels were torn off," he said, voice trembling. "I'm not stupid, Emma. I love her, she's my mom, but Dad was good to us. If she did something to him, I can't stay silent." I urged him to tell the police, but fear gripped him. Still, he promised he wouldn't lie if it came to that. As he left, he paused to say, "Grace wanted to talk too. She was confused, but scared of Olivia's control." 2 days later, I met Grace at a quiet coffee shop. Gone was her usual polished appearance. Her eyes were red and swollen. She demanded bluntly, "Is it true? Did Mom really get left out of the real will?" I explained gently, "Dad set up trusts for you and Ethan. You'll be taken care of, just not with the full control Mom expected." Grace's face crumpled. She admitted Olivia had promised her the beach house, but it was all a lie. Her voice cracked as she described the twisted web Olivia had woven, filling their heads with false hopes and secret plans. Despite everything, I felt a pang of compassion. Ethan and Grace were victims too, raised in a world of lies and manipulation. The battle was far from over, but I wasn't alone. Mason and Grace's courage to speak out was a beacon in the darkness, and with my father's foresight and the support of true allies, I was ready to fight for justice. The following week took a turn for the worse. Patricia appeared uninvited at a charity gala Dad had supported for years, a proud tradition in his memory. The moment she spotted me speaking with board members, she lost control. Across the crowded ballroom, she pointed at me, shouting, "There she is, the daughter who abandoned her father for years, now swooping in to steal his money." Security quickly intervened, escorting her out, as she continued to hurl accusations. The incident made headlines in local society pages, adding public spectacle to an already painful family ordeal. But the threats were just beginning. Shortly after, I began receiving anonymous messages. First, a text warning me to back off or face consequences. Then, an email arrived with photos showing me entering and leaving my hotel, proof I was being watched. Every step I took was shadowed by fear, but I refused to be intimidated. I reported everything to the police and to Caroline, who sped up our legal motions to freeze the estate and remove Patricia as executor. As the legal battle intensified, Caroline uncovered damning facts. Patricia had a history of deception that went far beyond our family. Investigations revealed she'd been married twice before, not once, as she'd claimed. Her first husband, a wealthy older man, had died suddenly of heart failure after just 3 years of marriage, leaving Patricia with his entire estate and effectively cutting out his children from a previous marriage. Even more chilling was the discovery that Patricia's supposed ex-husband, the father of Ethan and Grace, had never actually divorced her. Their separation was a staged ruse maintained while Patricia forged a new life and targeted wealthy men like my father. The surveillance photos from Dad's safety deposit box showed clandestine meetings and financial transactions that painted a picture of a practiced con artist. The police finally took action when Patricia violated a temporary restraining order I had obtained. She confronted me at a restaurant, screaming accusations and attempting to physically attack me before staff restrained her. The responding officers took the matter seriously, noting the strong odor of pharmaceuticals on her breath, another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Court proceedings on the contested will begin 3 weeks after the reading. The courtroom was thick with tension as Caroline and I faced Patricia and her attorney. Ethan sat behind his mother, but Grace was noticeably absent. Judge Harriet Wallace, known for her no-nonsense demeanor, made it clear from the start that harassment or intimidation would not be tolerated. Patricia's lawyer argued the earlier will was valid, and the newer one forged or created under undue influence. His polished arguments lacked evidence. Caroline systematically dismantled their case, presenting affidavits from witnesses, notary confirmations, and state filing records. The highlight was the testimony of Michael Reynolds' dad's longtime attorney, who testified that Dad had expressed concerns about Patricia's behavior and sought an independent attorney to update his will discreetly. The most surprising testimony came from Ethan. Against his mother's protests, he took the stand and revealed what he'd witnessed: the hidden prescription bottles, heated arguments between Patricia and her ex-husband about speeding things up, and the ways Patricia prevented me from seeing Dad in his final days. His voice cracked as he spoke, calling out the injustice. Patricia's facade crumbled under Caroline's cross-examination. When confronted with credit card records and her contradictory statements about her whereabouts during critical times, she faltered. The judge allowed Caroline to highlight Patricia's pattern of deception, and the courtroom felt the weight of truth settling over the proceedings. After a brief recess, Judge Wallace returned with her ruling: the newer will was valid and enforceable, the earlier one revoked. Patricia was removed as executor and I was appointed in her place. The judge referred the case to the district attorney's office for investigation into elder abuse and fraud. Justice, it seemed, was finally within reach. Yet the road ahead was still long, and the scars left behind would take time to heal. The court's verdict was a watershed moment, but the aftermath was anything but peaceful. Patricia's reaction was explosive. She refused to vacate the family home, changing security codes and instructing staff to bar my entry. The house, once a sanctuary, felt like a battleground. Her barrage of threatening and manipulative texts never ceased. She alternated between vicious accusations trying to portray me as a greedy opportunist and gaslighting messages that made me question myself. Her brother's menacing voicemails only deepened the tension, warning me to back off or face dire consequences. Fearing for my safety, I checked out of my hotel and moved to another under a different name. Every step felt like walking through a minefield. The intensity of Patricia's reactions signaled desperation. It became clear that the fight wasn't just about money. It was a battle for control, reputation, and power. Thankfully, I wasn't alone. I worked closely with Caroline, my attorney, who specialized in estate litigation and fraud. After carefully reviewing the documents and evidence, she confirmed my father's foresight. James was incredibly clever, Caroline told me. By engaging an independent law firm and registering his new will with the state, he created an ironclad legal position. Patricia can contest it, but she'll have to prove he was mentally incapacitated at the time of signing. But the real shock came when Caroline delved into Dad's medical records. "Emma," she said gravely, "there's evidence that Olivia may have tampered with your father's medications. If true, this crosses into criminal territory, potential elder abuse, or even manslaughter." I shuddered at the possibility, knowing it would be a grueling road to prove. We quickly developed a strategy. Caroline filed emergency motions to freeze all estate assets and remove Patricia as executor. The legal battle was only intensifying, but the foundation was solid. Meanwhile, Patricia launched a vicious smear campaign among Dad's friends and associates. She painted me as the manipulative daughter who preyed on a grieving, confused father. The words stung deeply, but I refused to be derailed. Truth and justice were on my side. One morning, returning to my hotel room, I found the door slightly ajar. My heart pounded as I called security before stepping inside. The room had been ransacked. Vital documents, including copies of Dad's medical records, were missing, though thankfully I had originals locked away safely. Security footage showed a man in maintenance uniform entering, but his face was blurred and unrecognizable. The hotel manager was sympathetic but helpless beyond enhancing security. Just when I thought I had no allies left, Mason reached out to me. "We need to talk. Away from Mom." We met at a busy cafe, a public space where I felt safe. Mason arrived looking weary and torn. He confessed he'd discovered Olivia burning documents in the backyard, financial papers, and perhaps more. He'd also found prescription bottles with Dad's name, but the labels were scratched off. Mason's confession was a turning point. "I'm not stupid, Emma. I love my mom, but she's done something terrible to Dad. I can't stay silent." His fear was palpable, but so was his resolve. He promised to be truthful if it came to that. Mason also mentioned that Grace, Olivia's daughter, was confused but scared. When I met Grace later, her usually polished demeanor was replaced by raw vulnerability. Tears streaked her face as she admitted that Olivia had lied to her about the inheritance, promising her the beach house, and more, only to dash those hopes cruelly. Despite the pain and betrayal, I felt a strange compassion for Mason and Grace. They were victims too, caught in Olivia's web of lies and manipulation. The family was broken in more ways than one. The fight was far from over, but with each new ally and revelation I grew stronger. My father's legacy and the truth were worth every battle ahead. The more I learned about Olivia's past, the clearer it became that this was not just a family dispute, it was a calculated pattern of deception. Caroline's investigation revealed that Olivia had been married twice before, both times to wealthy older men who died unexpectedly, leaving her with substantial inheritances. Each time, the children from her previous marriages were left with nothing. The similarities were chilling, and the thought that she might have played a role in their deaths haunted me. Even more shocking was the discovery that Olivia's so-called ex-husband, James Winter's father to Ethan and Grace, had never legally divorced her. Their separation was a sham, a staged act to conceal ongoing financial and personal entanglements. Surveillance photos from my father's safety deposit box showed clandestine meetings between Olivia and James, undermining her claims of abandonment. These revelations painted Olivia as a seasoned con artist, adept at manipulating wealthy men for financial gain. I struggled to reconcile this image with the woman who had tried to replace my mother and dismantle my family. The legal case took a dramatic turn when the police became directly involved. Olivia violated a restraining order by confronting me at a restaurant, screaming accusations and attempting to physically attack me. Staff intervened and called the police, who arrived promptly. The officers noted the strong smell of pharmaceuticals on her breath and took her behavior very seriously. The court proceedings began amid intense media attention. Caroline and I faced Olivia and her aggressive legal team in a packed courtroom. Ethan sat behind his mother, visibly distressed, while Grace was absent, likely overwhelmed by the ordeal. Judge Harriet Wallace, known for her firm stance and no-nonsense approach, wasted no time in setting ground rules. She warned Olivia against any further harassment or intimidation, making it clear that such behavior would not be tolerated. Olivia's attorney opened the case by arguing that the earlier will was the valid document, and that the newer will was either forged or made under undue influence. His polished presentation lacked the hard evidence to back his claims, however. Caroline countered with a meticulous presentation of affidavits, notarizations, and state records, confirming the legitimacy of the new will. The turning point came with the testimony of Michael Reynolds, my father's longtime attorney, who testified that Dad had expressed serious concerns about Olivia's behavior and had sought to update his will without her knowledge. Then Ethan took the stand. Against his mother's protests, he bravely recounted what he had witnessed: hidden prescription bottles, heated arguments about speeding things up, and how Olivia had kept me from seeing Dad in his final days. His testimony was heartfelt and devastating. Under Caroline's rigorous cross-examination, Olivia's facade began to crack. When confronted with credit card records proving she was out dining with James Winters on critical dates, Olivia faltered. The judge allowed the evidence to speak volumes about her credibility. After a brief recess, Judge Wallace returned with a decisive ruling: the new will was valid and enforceable. Olivia was stripped of her role as executor, and I was appointed in her place. The judge also referred the case to the district attorney's office for investigation into elder abuse, fraud, and misconduct. Justice had finally begun to prevail. Yet even as a weight lifted, I knew healing would take time. Though the courtroom had delivered its verdict, the battle for my family's future was far from over. Patricia, now stripped of her executor role, refused to relinquish control quietly. She barricaded herself in the family home, changing locks and security systems, making every attempt to prevent me from reclaiming what was rightfully mine and my father's legacy. The house, once a place of warmth and memories, felt cold and hostile, a stark reminder of how deeply betrayal can poison a home. Her attacks extended beyond legal maneuvers. My phone was bombarded with vitriolic messages ranging from threats to twisted apologies, each carefully crafted to destabilize me emotionally. Patricia's brother intensified the pressure, leaving menacing voicemails that implied dangerous consequences should I proceed. The weight of constant intimidation was heavy, yet I held firm, bolstered by the memory of my father's strength and the truth he entrusted me with. Living under this shadow forced me into a state of hypervigilance. I checked into different hotels under aliases, altered my routines, and reported every suspicious incident to local authorities. Despite the fear, I refused to retreat. My mission was clear: protect my father's legacy, expose the truth, and rebuild the life he had dreamed for me. In parallel, my attorney Caroline worked tirelessly, filing motions to freeze estate assets and pushing for criminal investigations into Patricia's conduct. We gathered evidence of financial fraud, elder abuse, and tampering with medical records, a complex web of manipulation and cruelty that painted a dark picture of Patricia's true character. As the investigation unfolded, the media caught wind of the story. Headlines splashed phrases like "Black Widow strikes again" and "Daughter uncovers deadly plot." Though painful, the exposure was a double-edged sword. It brought public scrutiny on Patricia and garnered support from those who knew my father and believed in justice. During this tumultuous time, I discovered hidden treasures my father had stashed away to preserve the past my stepmother sought to erase. Behind a false panel in his study, I found photographs of my mother, love letters between my parents, and even childhood artwork, tangible reminders of a life filled with love and hope. There were also videos Dad had recorded, reflections on life and legacy, including a final message meant for me. In the video, his face was thin, eyes clear despite the illness. "Emma," he said, "if you're watching this, then things have unfolded as I feared. I want you to know I regret trusting Olivia, but have done everything possible to protect you. You have your mother's wisdom and strength. Forgive my mistakes. Remember, the greatest inheritance isn't money, but the values of integrity, compassion, and perseverance." Watching that message, tears streamed down my face. It was as if Dad was with me, guiding me still. His words fueled my resolve to honor not just his fortune, but his spirit. Meanwhile, Mason and Grace, despite the chaos, began their own paths toward healing. Mason enrolled in community college, seeking to define his life beyond his mother's influence. Grace entered therapy to recover from years of manipulation. Though the family was fractured, I could not abandon them. They were victims too, caught in Patricia's toxic web. I set up educational trusts for both, hoping to give them a chance at a better future. Slowly, the family home was restored to its former warmth. The heirlooms returned to their places of honor, and the house breathed life again. I hosted a memorial at Dad's favorite sailing club, intimate and genuine, far from the cold staged funeral Patricia arranged. Friends shared stories that painted the man I loved, not the distorted version Patricia portrayed. The healing process was neither swift nor easy. Grief hit hard and anger flared when I remembered the final moments stolen from me. But amid the pain, I found strength I never knew. I had allies who stood by me and an unwavering belief in truth and justice. Dad's legacy, preserved through trials and tears, became my guiding light. In the months that followed, the court-ruling life slowly began to settle into a new rhythm, though the shadows of betrayal still lingered. I had moved back into the family home, the place filled with both painful memories and the warmth of my father's love. Restoring the house was more than just a physical task. It was a symbol of reclaiming the life and legacy that Olivia had tried to erase. I carefully reinstated the personal touches that my mother had created, from the antique clock in the hallway to the sailboat models Dad and I had built together. Each item was a small victory, a step towards healing. One afternoon, Eleanor, my father's longtime executive assistant, came over for tea in the sunroom, the room Mom had always loved most. As we sat surrounded by sunlight and the gentle hum of the neighborhood, Eleanor shared stories I had never heard before. She spoke of my father's secret efforts to keep in touch with old friends despite Olivia's attempts to isolate him. She told me how he had spoken of me often, about his pride in the woman I had become. "Your father worried a lot in his final year," Eleanor said quietly. "Not just about money, but about his legacy being twisted. He wanted to make sure you had what you needed, not just financially, but the truth." I nodded, the weight of those words settling deep within me. It was clear that my father's love had been his strongest weapon against the darkness that had crept into our family. The legal proceedings against Olivia continued. She remained in custody, denied bail due to the seriousness of the charges and the risk she posed. Mason agreed to testify against her in exchange for immunity, and Grace was undergoing psychological evaluations. She had been deeply manipulated by Olivia, caught in a web of emotional abuse that would take years to unravel. Though Mason and Grace had played roles in the painful chapters of our family, I couldn't abandon them. They were victims in their own right, shaped by a toxic environment. With the help of my attorney and financial advisors, I established college trust funds for both of them, designed to encourage independence and personal growth, values my father had championed. As the home slowly filled with the familiar treasures that Olivia had hidden away or discarded, I felt the presence of my parents surrounding me. Their love, resilience, and values had survived the storm. 3 months after moving back in, I organized a memorial service at Dad's favorite sailing club. Unlike the formal, impersonal funeral Olivia had orchestrated, this gathering was intimate and heartfelt. Friends and family shared stories that made us laugh and cry, celebrating the man he truly was. Walter, a close friend and mentor, raised his glass and said, "By the measure of lives touched, Robert was the richest man I ever knew." Listening to those stories, I realized how much more there was to learn about my father. Each person's memory revealed a new facet of his generosity, complexity, and love. It was a journey of rediscovery, a chance to connect with him beyond grief. Healing was not linear. Some days grief overwhelmed me, others anger flared when I thought about the moments Patricia had stolen. But through it all, I found strength in the legacy my father left, not the wealth, but the lessons of integrity, compassion, and perseverance. I began volunteering at a children's grief support group, turning my Sundays once reserved for sailing into a time to help others find hope. The holidays once dreaded became opportunities to create new traditions, gatherings filled with warmth, community, and healing. One spring morning, as I sat in Dad's study reviewing proposals for the Elizabeth Collins Foundation, I came across a framed quote on his desk. "The greatest inheritance a parent can give their children is a few minutes of their time each day." Despite his success, Dad's most valuable gift had always been his presence. That presence now guided me as I moved forward, choosing carefully who to welcome into my life. The legal battles, the betrayals, and the pain had shaped me, but they would not define me. I would honor my parents by living with the integrity and love they instilled in me. As the legal battles wore on, the truth about Olivia's manipulations and deceit continued to unfold, leaving a trail of shattered trust and hard-won justice. The district attorney's office took the investigation seriously, and Patricia faced multiple charges, including fraud, elder abuse, and accessory to involuntary manslaughter. The evidence we had gathered, from the tampering with medications to the financial misappropriations, painted a damning portrait of a woman who had systematically exploited my father's declining health for her own gain. The media coverage was intense and often painful. Headlines screamed stories like "Black Widow Strikes Again" and "Daughter's Detective Work Uncovers Deadly Plot." Though I declined most interview requests, the public spotlight brought much-needed attention to the case and prevented Patricia from slipping away unnoticed. The court proceedings were grueling, testing my strength and resolve, but I never wavered. I was fighting not just for my inheritance, but to protect my father's name and legacy. Mason agreed to testify against his mother, cooperating fully with investigators in exchange for immunity. Grace, meanwhile, was in therapy, grappling with the psychological toll of years spent under Patricia's control. Her path to healing was complicated and slow, but progress was being made. Despite their complicated roles, I never stopped hoping for their recovery and future independence. With the legal dust settling, I turned my attention to rebuilding what Patricia had tried to destroy. The family home, once tainted by conflict and control, slowly transformed back into a place of warmth and memory. Heirlooms returned to their rightful places. Walls that had been stripped bare were filled with photographs and mementos of happier times. The spirit of my parents filled every corner. I established the Elizabeth Collins Foundation in honor of my mother, a cause close to my heart. The foundation supports cancer research and provides resources for children who have lost parents to illness, a mission inspired by my mother's battle and my father's commitment to helping others. It felt like the perfect way to honor both their legacies, turning pain into purpose. Rebuilding my life wasn't without its challenges. Some days, grief would hit like a wave, washing over me unexpectedly. Other days, anger flared when I remembered the moments stolen from me, the final hours I never got to share with Dad. But through it all, I discovered an inner strength I never knew I had. The adversity revealed allies in unlikely places and taught me to trust my instincts, just as Dad had always advised. Most importantly, I learned that family isn't defined by blood or legal documents alone. It's built on shared values, mutual respect, and genuine care. My father understood this truth deeply and chose to protect those bonds in his will, favoring authenticity over appearances. On the anniversary of Dad's passing, I stood by his graveside, placing white roses, his favorite, beside his headstone. "I kept my promise, Dad," I whispered. "Your story was told, your wishes honored, your legacy lives on. The journey through grief, betrayal, and healing had taught me that sometimes the greatest strength comes from surviving our deepest wounds. If you've ever faced betrayal or fought for what's rightfully yours, I hope my story offers comfort and guidance. Trust your instincts, document everything, and never underestimate the power of truth. Family conflicts often reveal true character in unexpected ways. You are not alone. As the dust settled from the courtroom battles and legal confrontations, I found myself facing a new challenge, rebuilding the relationships fractured by years of deception and pain. Mason and Grace, my step-siblings, were complicated figures in this story, caught between their loyalty to their mother and the reality of the harm she had caused. I knew their upbringing had been shaped by Olivia's manipulations, and I couldn't simply write them off as enemies. Over time, I began to reach out to them in small ways. Mason, who had shown courage in testifying against Olivia, started carving out his own path, enrolling in community college and seeking to distance himself from his mother's toxic influence. Grace's journey was more fragile. The therapy she was undergoing was helping her process years of emotional abuse, but her trust was hard to earn. I established college trusts for both of them, carefully structured to encourage education and independence, values my father had always held dear. It wasn't just about money. It was about giving them the chance to build lives free from the shadows of the past. Every visit, every conversation was an exercise in patience and compassion. Despite everything I wanted to believe they could heal. Meanwhile, my own life was slowly coming back into focus. I returned full-time to the family home, restoring it not just physically, but spiritually. The house became a sanctuary once again, filled with the warmth of memories and the promise of new beginnings. I carefully restored the rooms my mother had designed, bringing back the cozy, inviting atmosphere Olivia had stripped away. Among the treasures I uncovered were personal letters, photographs, and mementos that painted a fuller picture of my parents' lives and love. In Dad's study behind a hidden panel, I found a collection of videos he had recorded over the years, snapshots of our family's story, his hopes, fears, and messages meant to guide me after he was gone. Watching those videos was like feeling his presence again. In his final messages, Dad spoke directly to me, urging me to live with integrity, to protect the legacy we had built together, and to trust my instincts. His voice, though frail, carried strength and love, a beacon during the darkest times. The memorial service I organized at Dad's favorite sailing club was a turning point. Unlike the cold, formal funeral Patricia had arranged, this gathering was filled with laughter, tears, and genuine remembrance. Friends shared stories that revealed sides of Dad the world hadn't seen, reminding me of the man he truly was, generous, kind, and deeply loved. Healing, I learned, was neither quick nor linear. There were days when grief overwhelmed me, when anger flared at the injustice and loss. But there were also moments of joy, connection, and hope. The journey transformed me, teaching me resilience and the power of truth. As I look forward, I carry with me the lessons of my parents that true wealth is measured not by possessions, but by the lives we touch, the values we uphold, and the love we share. Their legacy is my compass, guiding me through life's complexities and inspiring me to create a future defined by compassion and authenticity. The months after reclaiming my father's estate and legacy marked a profound transformation, not just for me, but for the entire family. The legal battles had been exhausting, the emotional toll nearly unbearable, yet amid the struggle, I discovered a strength within myself I never knew existed. My journey became about more than justice or inheritance. It was about healing, forgiveness, and forging new beginnings from the shards of a broken past. With Olivia removed from the family home, a sense of peace slowly returned to the house that once felt like a battlefield. I dedicated myself to restoring it not only as a physical space, but as a sanctuary where memories of love and resilience could flourish. I replaced the cold, modern decor Olivia had imposed with warm colors, familiar heirlooms and photos of my parents, symbols of the enduring bonds that no money could erase. But healing extended beyond bricks and mortar. I reached out to Mason and Grace, understanding that despite their mother's toxic influence, they were also victims. The establishment of their trust funds wasn't just financial security, it was an invitation to break free from the cycles of manipulation and build lives founded on honesty and self-worth. My meetings with them were tentative, fraught with complex emotions, but I held on to hope that compassion could bridge the gaps left by betrayal. Outside the home, I threw myself into the Elizabeth Collins Foundation, a tribute to my mother's battle with cancer and my father's philanthropic spirit. The foundation focused on funding cancer research and providing resources for children who had lost parents, a cause deeply personal to me. Turning grief into purpose gave me a sense of direction and fulfillment, reminding me that legacies are not just about wealth, but about impact and kindness. Volunteering with children's grief support groups became a new Sunday ritual, a way to honor my father's memory and offer solace to others facing loss. These moments of connection underscored the importance of presence and empathy, values my father cherished above all. The holiday seasons, once a source of dread and loneliness, transformed into opportunities to create new traditions. Hosting gatherings for friends and family who understood loss brought warmth and community where once there had been silence. One quiet spring morning, as I sat in my father's study reviewing grant proposals, my eyes landed on a framed quote he had kept on his desk. "The greatest inheritance a parent can give their children is a few minutes of their time each day." Those words resonated deeply. Despite his success, Dad's most precious gift had been his presence, the time he gave, the love he showed. As I navigate life without him, I strive to embody that lesson, valuing time and attention for those I love. The financial security he left provides stability, but the wisdom gained through this ordeal guides every choice I make. Looking back, I realize that the betrayal and loss forged a resilience that shapes me still. The journey taught me that family is defined not just by blood or legal documents, but by shared values, respect, and genuine care. It showed me the power of truth and the strength found in forgiveness. My father's legacy lives on not just in assets or accolades, but in the compassion, integrity, and perseverance that continue to inspire me every day. The journey from that devastating phone call about my father's hospitalization to the peaceful life I am building now has been a roller coaster of emotions, lessons, and growth. In the beginning, I was overwhelmed by shock and grief. I felt betrayed not just by Olivia, but by the very family I had trusted. It seemed impossible to reconcile the woman I thought my stepmother was with the manipulator she turned out to be. Yet as time passed, I realized that this painful chapter was shaping me into someone stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The betrayal burned away any naivety I had left. I learned to recognize manipulation and deceit quickly, to trust my instincts without hesitation, and to stand firm in my convictions. The process of uncovering the truth required courage and persistence. It meant facing uncomfortable realities and confronting painful emotions head-on. Yet it also revealed the depth of my father's love and foresight, and the power of truth to ultimately prevail. I also discovered the importance of allies. Friends, attorneys like Caroline, and even family members like Mason and Grace, despite their complicated relationships, became sources of strength and support. The experience taught me that family is not always defined by blood, but by the connections we nurture and the values we share. The loss of my father has deepened my appreciation for genuine connection and presence. His legacy was not merely the fortune he amassed, but the values he lived by: integrity, compassion, and perseverance. These lessons guide me daily, inspiring me to honor his memory, not by dwelling on the past, but by building a future filled with meaning and purpose. As I stand by his grave on the anniversary of his death, placing white roses, his favorite, beside the headstone, I feel a profound sense of peace. "I kept my promise, Dad," I whisper. "Your story was told. Your wishes were honored. Your legacy continues." My father's journey taught me that sometimes the greatest strength comes from surviving our deepest wounds. It's not about how much wealth or status we inherit, but how we carry forward the love and lessons of those who came before us. If you've experienced betrayal within your family or found yourself fighting for what is rightfully yours, I hope my story offers comfort and guidance. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Never underestimate the power of truth to ultimately prevail. Thank you for listening to my journey from betrayal to healing. Remember, even in our darkest moments there is hope, and sometimes the most profound growth comes from the pain we endure. As the seasons changed, so did I. The pain that once seemed unbearable softened into a quiet strength that carried me forward. Reclaiming my father's legacy was more than just a legal victory. It was a journey of healing, discovery, and transformation. I learned that true wealth isn't measured by money or possessions, but by the bonds we nurture and the values we uphold. The house once tainted by conflict and betrayal is now filled with light and warmth. Every corner tells a story of love, resilience, and renewal. The foundation named after my mother continues to grow, helping children and families facing the same kind of loss that shaped my life. Giving back has become my way of honoring both of my parents and finding peace in the present. My relationships with Mason and Grace, though complicated, are slowly evolving. Compassion and understanding are paving new paths forward, offering hope that even in fractured families, healing is possible. The trust funds I established for them represent not just financial support, but a commitment to break cycles of pain and foster independence. Each day I carry with me my father's wisdom, the importance of presence, integrity, and perseverance. His words echo in my heart. The greatest inheritance a parent can give is a few minutes of their time each day. I strive to live by this, cherishing time with loved ones and offering kindness to those in need. Looking back on this journey, I realize how much I've grown. The betrayal taught me to value authenticity and recognize manipulation. The loss deepened my appreciation for genuine connection, and most importantly, I discovered that the greatest strength comes from surviving our darkest moments and choosing to move forward with grace and courage. If my story resonates with you, remember that you are not alone. There is hope beyond hurt, light beyond shadows, and strength in every step toward healing. Trust yourself, seek truth, and hold tight to the values that define who you are. Thank you for joining me on this journey from heartbreak to healing, from loss to legacy. May we all find the courage to face our wounds and the wisdom to turn them into our greatest gifts.